guys, this is Sophia. So I was born in California. My mother is French, my father's American. My first international trip was from California to Spain when I was 6 months old. Shortly after, we moved to Quito, Ecuador. We stayed there for 4 years, and actually my first language is Spanish, then French, then English. So not a lot of people would think that. And then after Ecuador, we moved to California again for a few months. And then we went to the Middle East, to Qatar for 7 years. And in that time, we also went to France for 6 months. I actually grew up in the French school system up until high school. My mom was actually my English teacher in my French school and my French teacher in my American high school. So it's kind of weird and different, but that happens in international schools. So after the Middle East, we went to Mexico City for 4 years. So I did my last years of middle school in a French system, and then I started high school in Mexico City in an American high school, which were very different, and I loved it. And then we went and I did my last 2 years of high school in Lima, Peru, and then I graduated and went to college in the US in Utah for 5 years, have a degree in sales and marketing and in interior design. And then after Utah, I went to Italy for my master's degree, and I stayed there for 2 years, and then I decided to have my own company and I wanted to travel some more. And so then I decided to kind of go everywhere. So I was in Brazil, I was in Peru, Spain, Italy, France, England, Dubai, Miami, kind of everywhere. And so after I settled down for a little bit, I moved back to Peru for 2 years, and then I moved to Miami for 1.5 years, and then I moved to Tucson, Arizona, and then Spain, and then Italy, and currently I'm in Houston, Texas. And so I discovered the term TCK once I was in college. Actually, my mother went to this event at my little sister's school where the author of a TCK book was speaking, and she came back from the event and she called me, and she was all frantic and was like, I finally understood your concerns and your frustrations about moving. And my parents never knew, because my mom is French and she grew up in this small French town, and my father grew up in the States, and so they didn't move or travel really extensively until they were married and had kids, and then they traveled. And so it was quite interesting that was the term that they used, and I finally identified with it. So I could not identify with a culture or a country, but I could identify with the notion of a third culture kid, and it totally made sense. And I researched it more and found this little community of people who totally understand how hard it is, and yet it's so ingrained in us from an early age that we don't really know anything else. So the question I always get is, where are you from? And I go into complete panic, because and any TCK person can relate to this, because you don't know where you're from. But where you're from for me doesn't necessarily correlate to home. So for me, home, you can be from somewhere, like and it depends on what your notion of from is. If it's where you were born, where your parents are from, where the last place you lived, it could be a million things. But for me, home, my home for me is Italy. It's Florence, Italy. It's where I went to grad school. It's where I feel most at peace, where I feel most like me. but it's also, home can be anywhere, and I think it took me a really long time to grasp that notion, and I struggled with it for a long time. I didn't have an identity crisis, but I had like a home crisis, where I just learned that home can be anywhere that you are at and you feel comfortable being, and surrounded by the people you love. So it could seem a little cliche for TCK people, but it really is where you feel most loved and most comfortable to be yourself. And it doesn't have to be in your passport country. It doesn't have to be where people think it should be. It could be anywhere. And so I learned that home is wherever I'm happy and I'm surrounded by people I love, and so that's home to me. I think that the number one challenge as a TCK is, actually there are several. Always being asked where you're from. I think it's such a basic question when you meet people, but it's the one I struggle the most with, because it's such a long story that I don't know even where to begin from. People ask me where you're from, and my friends just laugh because they know it could be, the short version or the long extended version, and so they always turn to me and wait to see a reaction, and I look petrified because I hate that question. I don't know what to answer really, because I don't feel like I belong to just one place. And so but a real challenge for me is I don't think I could ever settle in just one place. I have too much of the wanderlust bug in me to settle in one place, and I think that that's hard, to not be able to set roots or connect with a community on a deeper level. I always go from place to place and jump from culture to culture, and I love it, but I think it's hard to get roots into that place and to establish yourself in just one place. For me, that's my challenge, because I don't think I'd be able to stay in just one place. So that would be my challenge, and I urge other TCK people out there, if you have a story, we'd love to hear it from you and see what you think about your TCK journey and advice that you can give to others. So I can't wait to hear all about you guys. Bye!